we are using these songs as a way of conversing with God. And I love it when worship feels like a conversation.
Well, Matt Redman, it is an absolute pleasure to have you joining us on our Undistracted podcast. Thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
It's incredible to think of just how long you have been writing music, creating music, and I think putting passion into the hearts of people around the world when it comes to the way we each express our own, desire for worship. When you think about the first time that you stepped into this arena, this world of worship, what was your original intention in wanting to put pen to paper and add lyrics, to a very diverse space of music?
Well, it depends if you mean before, like records. Like the very first time I stepped into the space in terms of songwriting was, I felt like I needed to write songs. I had some turbulent years in my teenage years, and that's how I got into songwriting. I wanted to talk to God. And some people journal, some people do what they do. For me, the songwriting thing seemed such a natural way of talking to God. So I did that. I think before long, I realized you could help other people talk to God and see him and sing to him through songs as well. And then, I guess some people, it piqued their attention. We ended up recording some other songs, and it went from there.
Did you have an understanding of what worship was back then, or it just felt like an intuitive expression?
I think I had an understanding just because it had really impacted me at an early age in church. I remember 10 years old, I'd wander up and they'd be singing to God in church. And it was interesting because I couldn't describe the dynamic at the time, but what I was seeing was the people of God in the presence of God, pouring out the praises of God. There was this dynamic happening in that room that I wanted to be part of, and I wanted more of in my life. And so that's why I started playing these songs at home, because I really loved what they did. They seemed to bring this kind of calm in the storm, seemed to be very stabilizing and helpful in every way. And so I guess I did have a bit of an understanding of like, oh, this is cool. We're talking to God through these songs together. And it's actually pretty great dynamic when we do. And wait a minute, people have been doing this for thousands of years. There's even a songbook in the middle of the Bible.
Taking the experience of worship from a church service into your own home, I feel like that's something that people can struggle with the concept of, right? That worship is something contained to the people that can play guitar, that can sing, that can do all of those things. Was it a natural thing to you to think, I can just do this for myself at home? I mean, yes, you could obviously play music, but taking it out of that church context, how did you kind of get over that hurdle, the hurdle that it can be for some people?
Honestly, I mean, I imagine it would be a hurdle for some people. For me, it felt like the natural way for me to talk to God. I felt like I'm kind of made like that. And when I'm maybe not even a great expressing my feelings or something, but I put a guitar in my hands and suddenly I'm getting a little bit better at it, through music, through talking to God. And I think for all of us though, I know a lot of people find help and health in the Psalms. I don't think I've met many Christians who aren't drawn to the Psalms. There's 150 songs in the middle of the Bible, would have been the hymn book of Jesus as he walked the earth. And in those 150 songs, you've got every imaginable human emotion. You've got joy, you've got angst, you've got anger, you've got desperation, you've got celebration. I mean, it's all in there. Tears and gladness and love and laughter and everything. And the kind of spectrum of human existence and experience is in these 150 songs. And I think a lot of people relate to those. And so I guess when I'm writing a song, I'm not claiming it should be in the Bible and it's as good as anything like that. But I do want to follow in the tradition of those psalmists who were just singing out truth and singing their hearts out. And the two things come together was pretty beautiful.
And there's something about immersing yourself in both scriptural truth and I suppose a present day expression of whatever those emotions might be that we're each experiencing. Yeah. Your new album, Lamb of God, it's been described as thoroughly immersive because of the live setting that you recorded in these very ancient kind of ruins. Can you explain a little bit about the significance of the location of where you did record it?
Yes, so we recorded it in a place called The Mission in San Juan Capistrano, Southern California, where I live. And it's just this stunning location, founded in 1776. actually the oldest working standing building in the whole of California is on the site there. And it would have been the birthplace of what we know now to be, what we now call Orange County. So it's a pretty special place. And it's usually closed to most outside things, but through God's kindness and a couple of friends, a little door opened and we were able to record there. They were very kind. Let's have the place for the day. And I love it visually, aesthetically. It's just the most stunning place, standing under that California sun, singing amongst these ancient ruins, and just brand new songs in an old setting is pretty fantastic in my book. And then, the songs themselves, this thread started to come together of the centrality of the cross. And I've written a lot of songs about the cross through the years. I always try to have one song on the cross on the record, because we're going to need songs about the cross, because probably we shouldn't go a Sunday without singing about it, right, at church. But on this one, that theme came to the forefront so much. I mean, I think 5 or 6 songs directly about the cross. I was almost fighting it at one point, thinking I'm going to look like a dummy here, doesn't know about anything else. Maybe I need to calm down. But then I thought, no, actually, let's just follow it. These are the songs that seem to be rising to the top. And then it became Lamb of God, the whole theme of the record. Even the cover artwork, if people want to look that up, is my daughter took the photo, and it's of an artist's work at Wheaton College in Illinois, USA. And this guy had taken an old corpus statue of Christ on the cross from a derelict church. He'd taken it to the college campus, then gone around, collected vacuum bags of debris from around the college campus, with the thought that in those bags is people's hair and skin cells. Like, we're kind of in those bags, pretty majorly. And then he layered those all over this statue of Christ on the cross as a sign that all of our sin and shame was laid on him. And it's pretty powerful. So that's the album artwork. From the artwork through the songs, that theme of the cross comes shouting through.
There's a real intentionality to it. And I want to ask you a little bit more about the music that's on there, but also from my understanding of, America and what it looks like now. I mean, Orange County is this really lavish, what we'd say maybe bougie kind of part of the area. To think that it is something that has a history with mission and these very ancient kind of spaces seems a little bit like incongruous. So is there a foundation there that was more based around that kind of Christian heritage then?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, because you got that thing. Actually, they built these missions up and down the West Coast. They're all about one day's walk from each other. So right back then, it would be like we visit one and then walk to one for the next day and hang there. But actually, in more recent history, the Jesus People movement. In fact, there's a movie out right now, just come out, called The Jesus Revolution. It's all about this people movement of young people coming out of the swinging 60s. Here in California, who gravitated towards Christ, and this revival broke out, and that all happened right here on the doorstep too. It's the birthplace of Calvary Chapel, which planted 1,000 church. Maranatha music way back then. Few other big movements. So it's a fascinating place to be. There's definitely something in the kind of spiritual soil here.
And reconnecting to those roots as you're writing songs that really reconnect people to the essential tenets, I suppose, of faith. You've mentioned the cross, even the song Son of Suffering, that speaks about so beautifully, there's a God who bleeds, right? Like, that lyric just caught me, because I thought that really is something that distinguishes Jesus from other representations or ideas of God, because there's a humanity and an ability to experience, I hesitate to use the word brokenness, but it is, right? It's like you can be hurt, you can be impacted by emotion, and it's a really beautiful thing that you capture.
Yeah, that song, I mean, it's about the cross, but like you say, it's a little bit more layered than that, and it's really a song about God's solidarity with our suffering, how he identifies with our pain, how he himself was called a man of sorrows, one who was familiar with suffering, acquainted with grief. And it's quite phenomenal if you think about it. How would a God who's so high and holy and powerful in every way make himself so vulnerable and weep and even choose to bleed? And it's a mystery I don't think we'll ever get over. And I love singing that song.
What keeps you fascinated in the mystery of God? To keep writing songs, to after so many years stay in this pursuit, what keeps you there?
I think it's just the subject matter is so good. You know, I remember an old pop producer once saying, in pop music, you basically can write 4 songs: I love you, I hate you, go away and come back. You know, and of course it's a bit more than that, but it's kind of funny. But when it comes to writing about Jesus, if you only have to look through those old hymn books to realize, like, this is really rich subject material. You can sing about the attributes of God. You can sing about the heart of God. You can sing about the nature of God, the ways of God, the deeds of God, his story up till now, his story of all that's still to come. You can sing about creation and the cross and salvation, redemption, and the ascension and the resurrection. And there's so much to get your teeth into once you dive into this thing. And I think it's probably that. I think it's that the subject matter is just so good. You know, we've been singing for 2,000 years since Christ came, right? But we're still pumping out a ton of songs about the cross each year. And in some ways, how does that make sense? There was this singular event on this hillside at Calvary. How can it be 2,000 years later, after thousands upon thousands of people have already made their attempts and sung their songs? How is it that we're still, churning out these songs every year? And it's because the subject matter is so good. It's so inspiring. It's so deep. It's so layered. Again, a lot of those old hymn writers, they just find so many windows onto the cross that you can look through, find something new there. So many angles you can come to the cross through. And that's really the key. For me, it's like trying to put a universal theme in a unique way. This is, I think, if you count it as any album that had new material on, I think this is my 19th album. And I'm not getting bored of writing these songs. In fact, I feel more inspired than ever. And the reason is because there's always so much more to say about who Jesus is, and just trying to find that universal theme, something you want to sing about, should be sung about. It's biblical, it's relevant to people's lives. But you're trying to come at it in a unique way. How can I put a fresh spin on this lyrically or musically?
And I think you're writing now for an audience and a time where understandings of church, people's knowledge of God, of Jesus, is a little bit more scattered and it's fragmented. Like, depending what part of the world you're listening from, Christianity is not really at the center of society so much. Does that factor into the motivation you have in the songs that you write, how you want it to reach people?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you're always trying to get this thing of keep everything thoroughly biblical, and at the same time trying to make sure you're speaking in people's language. The old guy, Lord Alfred Tennyson, he was poet laureate to Queen Victoria all those years ago, and I think he's the most quoted person in the English language after Shakespeare. So he knew what he was doing with words. He said the hardest thing in the world to write is a hymn. And he said, because in a hymn, you've got to be both commonplace and poetical. You've got to have it rich and deep, and yet you've got to speak in that everyday person's language. And you're battling with that, the everyday and the eternal, trying to speak about these huge, grand, eternal themes, but trying to speak them in a way where the average person is going to know what you're talking about. And there might be some words in there that are alien to them. Sometimes that's okay. Like the word holy, it means set apart. So I kind of like it that we've kept that word for God. It's set apart for God. It's a good little hint about what the word itself means. But there's other times where, someone could read through a song you've written and they wouldn't have a clue what you're talking about. So you've got to be really careful to unpack these themes, in a way that really rings true. The way I look at it is, it's a little bit like in the nutrition world. You've got these complex carbohydrates, which are hard to break down. So grass would be one. And interestingly, if I was to eat a handful of grass, I won't get anything nutritional out of it.
And you're not going to like it.
No, and a cow could eat it, and actually has the right enzymes to break it down, and actually can unlock the nutrition. Sometimes I don't want our songs to be like songs that only a scholar or a theologian or someone's been a Christian for 20 years can unpack and really gets what it means. You want to have that richness, that truth, those nutrients in the song, but you want to have them readily available so the average person can chew on them and get something out of them.
Yeah, I mean, even the word worship, right? That's something that in faith circles can be understood to a degree, but in a broad context, not everybody's going to have a framework to understand even, really what that means. And yet our lives, in whatever way, we all kind of worship something, right? So how would you explain even what worship is?
Yeah, I mean, I already said it earlier on, but I just try and boil it down to the simplest way you can say it, and it's just we're really talking to God. You know, we are using these songs as a way of conversing with God, and I love it when worship feels like a conversation. You know, when you see something of Him, and then you sing something to Him, and you see something more of Him, and I think songs can achieve different things, but for me, I'm always trying to write a song in a way where it's both a classroom and a chapel. And what I mean by that is the song maybe teaches something about God, or if someone already knows it, reminds them of it, brings something into focus that's important about who He is. And then from there, you go into the chapel, and now it's time for devotion. It's time to say what you think about that, time to respond, maybe to say thank you or some expression of praise out of that. And I think it's kind of a healthy thing. You think of a lot of these songs we sing these days, probably 20 years ago, like "How Great Is Our God," "Here I Am to Worship." The verses are the classroom. It's telling you something about God who wraps Himself in light and darkness tries to hide. The chorus is the chapel. So "Here I Am to Worship," or "How Great Is Our God." And you have it these days, songs like "Living Hope" or "King of Kings." Some of these great kind of songs which have content, but also a chance for you to tell God what you think about what you just sung.
Is worship always connected to music, do you think?
No, I mean, music's basically the icing on the cake, right? You need to have the cake. You know, if it's just music, then I think God makes it clear in Scripture He's not really all that interested if you're living the complete opposite of what you're singing. And I think He enjoys our songs, but they need to be in tune with our lives, right? And so I think that means when we use the word worship, sometimes we need to remind people, hey, and when we say worship, obviously we've been referring to music, but it's way, way deeper than that. You've got to let your lives agree with your lips, you know, and try and bring both to God.
Hey guys, thank you for watching this interview. Make sure you subscribe to Hope 1032's YouTube channel so that you can stay up to date on all our latest content. But until then, watch any of these videos and enjoy.